Some leaders don't just build companies, they build futures. Welcome back to The Real Room. I'm your host, Lucretia Mitchell, and today we're sitting with a woman whose leadership proves that innovation can be rooted in purpose and success can still serve the planet. Our guest is a nationally and internationally recognized founder, named a top inspiring woman to watch in 2025, and featured across major platforms, including CEO Journal, Black Impact Magazine, LA Lifestyle, the UK Reporter, and more. But titles aside, what sets her apart is vision. She created Utopia Solutions from a childhood aspiration, reimagining how the world uses packaging by turning away from single use, eco destroying materials toward plant based, compostable, degradable alternatives. Her work doesn't just reduce waste, it creates opportunity for farmers, manufacturers, and future generations. This is leadership that asks better questions, leadership that chooses long term impact over short term gain, leadership that embodies the founder shift, my new book on the critical transformations required to grow from visionary founder into the leader your business, your people, and your purpose need. Let's get into it. Welcome to The Real Room. Thank you for saying yes and being here. I am
Absolutely.
excited.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. All right. So we have Miss Sharina Perry, correct?
Yes.
With Utopia Solutions.
Well, actually, Utopia Solutions is one of our companies.
Okay.
But Utopia Plastics is
Yes.
the brand, the trademark. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me just a little bit about yourself for those that may not know. It was important. And first, I want to say this and just give context. I've been following you for a while, and just the work that you've done within the community, within our city, and just internationally has been amazing. You are definitely an inspiration, not only to me, but I know to so many others. And so it was important to have that type of leadership, that type of person here in this room today. And so I thought, what better person to talk about leadership and just how to achieve the type of skills and things that you've reached at this point. And so it was important for me to have you, but I would love for people to understand just who you are. We talked about just you coming from New Mexico to Oklahoma at 14 years old. Can you just elaborate on that story for us?
I will. Yeah. So I was born and raised
Mm.
in Hobbs, New Mexico. My dad worked for Texaco at the time. He got a job transfer. So we moved to Oklahoma. It's an interesting walk to moving to Oklahoma. Of course, first I was coming at 14 years old, and it was funny because they would say, no black people live in Oklahoma. Like, that's cowboys and Indians live there. And we moved to a small town, Maysville.
Mm.
That was where the housing was for Texaco. And I would say that move was the first time I really encountered racism in my life.
Mm.
Coming from a diverse community, but it was the stereotypical,
Mhm.
the first people to come to our homes there was a real estate agent and a coach. And the coach, when they found out, it was like, my brother, they're talking about running a story, that you got the black family in town and the stereotypical sports, and the real estate agent telling us where we could live.
Mm.
And told us that the last black people that had lived there had lived in Lindsay, and they were burned out of town 35 years before we had come.
Mm.
And we're talking the late 80s.
Yeah.
So that was very different. But not only that, we were stopped by the police every time we went in and out of town.
Mm.
And we lived there 3 months, but it was certain that my mom and dad were not okay with that being home. And we actually would drive to see if there were other black people in Oklahoma. And we went to Wynnewood and we saw some kids they're at a park. And now that I think about it looked real creepy because
Yeah.
it was my mom and us in the car. And we like followed them to see
See,
if there was a neighborhood. And there was. And we like cheered, we celebrated. But um, my dad had been talking with workers, and they had told him that he might try going to Norman.
okay.
And so my dad made the sacrifice of over an hour commute one way
Mm.
to make sure that we were good. And so that landed us in Norman. But that was still very different because um, it still wasn't the level of diversity. Um, it was like everyone kind of existed in pockets.
Yeah.
But the odd thing was, is like, I thought that because Norman had a greater population and more people of color, even though it was small in the school, that it would somehow give me a sense of belonging.
Mm.
But that wasn't the case.
Mm.
That's when I really realized that, imagine being 14, 15 years old, you're trying to figure out and you're trying to understand, who are you?
Mm.
Because you don't have a place to fit in, to be defined. But then I really came to understand, as I saw different people move through different groups, that it was really more about the culture and the community.
Mm.
That's what people like to stay with, what they're familiar
Mm.
with. And that transcends race, gender, well, it's closely related to socioeconomic status, because where we live is where we assimilate to
Right.
the people that are around us. So that was a lot. That was teaching me a significant amount of really that.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you this. When did you really figure out who you were as a woman, as a Black woman? When was it that it hit like, okay, I'm her, right?
I think that first, I think you have to come into who you are as a person.
Mm.
I think society begins to tell you you're a Black woman,
Mm.
right? It's and the reason I say that is, I grew up, and my uncles, my family, they were supportive.
Mm.
They love you.
Yeah.
That family, that environment. My grandfather always reminded me that I can be whatever
Mm.
I wanted to be. And I remember, being in the vehicle to my dad and my uncles, and I'm this girl bouncing around. They still tell the stories. One of my uncles, buying me Barbie dolls, and they always reminded me that I could
Mm.
be whatever I wanted to be. But they never made really the distinction about being a woman. So I think it's that seed of, you can be whatever you want to
Mm.
be,
No matter
first of
what.
all,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
Right. And so then it was when I was in school, again, it really wasn't about race. So I went through the Tomorrow's Leaders program in Norman. I had the opportunity to shadow Chuck Thompson through that.
Hmm.
And I'm going into, at that time, they had Republic Bank, and it was the acquisition
Yeah.
of Security Bank. And as they were expanding, and I'm going into these meetings, and people look a certain way,
Hmm.
they're dressed a certain way. I knew that that professional space was where my spirit was good,
Mm.
because I was really convicted for what was better for me.
I love that.
So,
Mm.
I started shopping at Casual Corner. I mean, like, I'm wearing suits to high school. I don't remember wearing a pair of jeans, but there was a lot of things that, it was really easy living in New Mexico. My mom, amazing seamstress. There was 6 kids. She did a lot of our sewing, and
Mm.
she would go into the high-end retail stores, and she would just duplicate the pattern
Love
and
that.
make it. I mean, she just phenomenal. But that in me, like, this is what I want to wear. But I will tell you, there was my speech teacher came to me, and she said, I think you should enter this contest. And the Rotary had put on a contest, and it was called the 4-way speech.
Mm.
Now, at the time, mind you, the Rotary didn't have any women,
Mm.
and it didn't have any people of color in it. But I was selected to represent the Rotary in their four-way speech contest. That's when, again, as a young person, you're understanding that race, gender, what happens when you just want to win? You're going to select the best. So I think life was teaching me that it didn't matter what color I was or what gender I was, as long as that I showed up to be the best and give the best where it was needed and wanted.
So let me ask this. I heard that it's almost like you talked about being in the professional space, and I heard purpose, right? It was like in that moment, it was maybe you figured out, okay, this may be something I want to do. This is a something that may, be my purpose, right? Tell me what was actually that first moment where you were like, okay, I love this space and this is where I want to focus on.
People would talk about like purpose and work. I didn't believe that was. That didn't make any sense to me. And I mean, fast forward, there's time through my life and my career, but I have been an entrepreneur for a long time. And I was a prime government contractor, built systems, cable and internet systems, like the University of Oklahoma, my client, Fort Sill military base, my client, prisons, my client. So I was the only African-American woman in this space doing this, was called the antithesis of what that normally looked like, but I was still showing up as me. And I was good. We were good. I had, prior to starting my own company, I was the director of operations for another company, and we grew to be the largest provider in the country. And I was good. I was good even when I went into being my own, but I was just showing up, being and doing good. I would hear people, oh, I'm in my purpose. No, that's like making money and just being good. And I didn't, but I will tell you, so this utopia, when I was younger and I grew up in a faith-based home, and it was really kind of, I guess utopia kind of would be like paradise that the Bible talks about.
Yes.
So it was about building my relationship with God. I wanted to know how to be called. Like, it's one thing to call God and say you have a relationship with God, but here God is calling Abraham his friend. And then that he would be so confident in Job, who wasn't of the lineage, that he would say, have you seen my servant Job? But more so that my favorite scripture, Proverbs 27:11, be wise, my son, and make your father's heart rejoice, that I might make a reply to the one who is taunting me. To think that I had the power to do whatever I did to make God's heart glad. I wanted to see God not as just the deity. I wanted God to call me his friend. Not, I did. I wanted that. And so I wanted to try to do the right thing. And I was real convicted, but still, there was reality in life, and it wasn't all these great decisions. But utopia for me, when I was a kid, I had created, it was the world of how I navigated disparity. It didn't make sense to me that people would have abundance and people would go hungry.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me that people mistreated people based on race or things they couldn't control. It didn't make sense that people didn't want or care to hear people's story and were so consumed in them themselves.
Yeah.
And so, you'd hear about stuff in the news and school, which it was different. There was no social media then. So in utopia, when I would hear something happen, I would think, how would God want that done? So utopia became my way of coping. So that just existed. I remember telling my parents when I was younger that utopia was going to change the world by the time I was 50. I was a preteen. There's no way I even understood that. I don't even think we even, like, everybody was old who was
Yeah.
over 40, right? That was kind
Right.
of some crazy thinking, but that's what I said. And so fast forward, really the health, the issue of neurofibromatosis had hit my family, which is an incurable growth of tumors that disproportionately, through study, learning that it had disproportionately affects minority communities and heavily leans into environmental impacts that I later came to learn. So I developed a health and wellness line of products, and in thinking about what health and wellness line, I would talk to a lot of people about this idea of utopia. And so as a friend of mine that actually we were doing some work together, and he was like, why don't you just use what you've always talked about? That utopia,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, that is like real. And then I started watching people. Took a deep dive. I studied over 600 white papers and developed a health and wellness line. Um, I had gained not only national attention with the health and wellness product, but had worked with an organization associated with Rakuten and got my product approved for distribution. My actually first market were partners from Hawaii, and then it was approved for distribution in Japan.
Wow.
And people were having good results, and I wanted to get FDA approval, but you can't make claims. You could say, oh, well, but you couldn't, and I wanted to get the FDA approval, but that's where I think it was at that point or that part of my journey. And the reason I say it because it was at that point I could see God's hand guiding things in a different way. And it wasn't about my work. It was about what was being placed in front of me
Yeah.
to use what God had given. And then fast forward, there was a real conversation with God in my kitchen where I created a straw and prayed all night and talked to God. And that was a download. That was like the writing on the wall,
Yeah.
and you just, your hand is free flowing, like
Mm.
this is God. And since then I've watched his alignment and guidance since. And I but God, here I
Yeah.
am, send me, that's absolutely how I feel. I know I'm going to show up and do the work.
Mm.
I know that God has faith and trust in the things, the gifts that he planted inside of me, but that he would trust me
Mm.
with this portion. Our first assignment was to steward the earth. That was first human assignment.
Right.
God never changed his purpose.
Mm.
He just changed his plan.
Mm.
So I never forget that I fully believe that I am in the work of stewarding the earth because have been assigned to do this by God.
So much to unpack there. I want to ask you this because when we think about just alignment, right, and we talk about God's will, does it ever now sitting in the spot that you're in, does it ever surprise you by what God does or how he blesses you? Because sometimes I still pinch myself at times like, okay, I know who he is. I know what he can do, right? But does it ever surprise you in the space that you're in right now?
In a different way.
Mm.
Because in my life, I was pregnant with my sons in 2005,
Mm.
and the doctors had told me that I needed to terminate the pregnancy or
Mm.
I would die.
Mm.
And there were a lot of, I think you don't think you're going to question God, and you think your relationship is good. And that of crying out to God, like, why would you take me on this journey? Why would you allow that? Why would this be if you were going? I think it was that, and then making the decision not to trust God. I read to my sons. I walked with my sons. I prayed with my sons in my womb, and I talked to God. And I think at that point, God was no longer just the deity. God became my homeboy. He became my friend. He became my confidant, because only he knew mentally the struggle that I was going to. And then at the point where I go in after I made this decision, and the doctors are stunned because my condition had totally reversed itself. Had my sons at 36 weeks completely healthy, because they were growing there. I'm short, and my torso short, and these big 18 and 19-inch babies were running out of room, and that they had no health issues. And then to go back, and my primary care physician say there's no medical reason why you are alive and those boys are, and watched what God did, that no one could anymore tell me that God was not present, God was not able, God could not accomplish anything for me. So, you know, when your life is in front of you and you walk through things, that's different than what you deal with work. So I share that because there's a point where the relationship with God, for you to have complete trust and faith and see God, that there is a pivot in your life, and that's different for everyone, and that's a different point in your walk. But I know in the professional journey, I can now look back and say that everything I encountered in my life was preparing me for the moment where I had stood the test of faith. And now all I did was have to finish running my race. When no one else was the maker of my narrative, that I could show up boldly. And so now, like, I laugh sometimes. I mean, when it never gets old. It never gets old to see a manufacturer make a new product made of Utopia plastics. It never gets old. I am like truly a kid. Because one, God could have chose anybody. But when it does, and to see something that I don't, I've learned, I didn't have a background in engineering, chemistry. Now, I was educated, English communication, and I have a strong work ethic, and I believe I can do anything, and I can learn anything, but it wasn't the textbook. So for me to then, my patent attorneys say, you've reinvented plastics and you put the big boys to shame. And I'm watching God, and every time a product is made and it's proof and people discounted me and didn't believe, and I'm questioned, that is like, but God, you chose me.
But God.
I mean, it's like, I don't, it, no, I am overwhelmed sometimes by the grace and glory of God. But I am also watching God allow me to see the working out of what He is doing in the lives of others, in our team, in our partners, in the blessings that he is bestowing and what he's doing for people around me and where he's allowing me to plant and water. And I'm watching God make whatever he has grow. And that's the win for me every day.
Yeah.
Tell
Come.
people I get to wake up every day knowing I'm in the business of doing good and I can say yes where I want to, no where I don't want to, it and sleep good
Yeah.
knowing it.
Listen, I have the chills because I feel God all around you, just the presence and how you spoke. I'm always, it, like you said, it never gets old for me. I'm grateful to be able to be in this space and do what I do in my work life. I'm a real estate broker, and to be able to do that every time a house sale or whatever the case may be, I'm still like, thank you, God, for choosing me to be able to do it. It's like almost like the first time, every
Mm-hmm.
time. And I think there's a certain type of focus and a certain type of space that you have to be in order to stay in that space and always be grateful and humbled by that, right? And so when I heard you talk, I think back to other leaders that I've watched, just evolve into who they are. But answer this question for me, for anyone out there that may be a leader, right? And they feel like God has brought them to it, but they're so confused because there may be some, some quiet moment, should we say, sometimes where they're uncertain, did he really bring me to it? Talk on times where that's maybe happened to you, but what I've always learned too is that there's a lesson in those moments. So can you talk on that
Mm-hmm.
for me?
First, I know identifying what type of leader are you.
Mhm.
I was asked to give to the graduating cash of leadership for the Oklahoma City Young
Mhm.
Professionals, and they wanted me to talk about leadership. And I'm always thinking like, what is a leader?
Mhm.
And when you take, a lot of times we recklessly or carelessly
Mhm.
call ourselves leaders
Mhm.
and we assign that somebody is a leader.
Mhm.
But the question really becomes, what are they leading you to?
Mhm.
If you're going to say, because a person takes a stand or stands in a position or exists, does not mean they are leading you to the best thing
Mhm.
in your life. So if I'm going to say the role of being a leader is really service,
Mhm.
it's really servant, it's really a selfless role. For me, I have also what's produced from it.
Mhm.
I tell people I create leaders. I am part of planning and watering to build people
Yes.
to be leaders because I'm focused on what's building you as the spiritual man
Mhm.
that drives the physical man
Mhm.
in the direction that you understand that the spirit needs to be guiding the people that you are leading,
Come on.
and that it is, if I'm going to let my light shine, that is
Mhm.
only for God's glory.
Mhm.
Like it's not and I believe that the longer through this walk and this journey is more humbling.
Mhm.
And a lot of time people think of humility as a negative thing, but the humility is you understand your assignment, understanding that this isn't about you. I want to lead people to be a better version of themselves for what God may have for them.
Yes.
So even if you come in and you're a part of our organization, I want you to draw out the gifts, and
Mhm.
I want you to be able to come to a place that you can identify
Mhm.
that God has something for you. And just like he was preparing me in my journey, there were wins, there were challenges. He put me in places, and those weren't my permanent resting
Mhm.
places. And
That's
so
good.
I think it's so important to really take the title of leader very seriously.
Most definitely.
In my organization now, I have been, people have come in very successful, extremely, they've built organizations, they've global organizations, they built, I mean, national brands. I mean, it's been the, they've led hundreds, thousands, they've led, and they show up for me to lead. And that says a lot too, because if the people around you respect your leadership,
Yes.
that they are leaders in themselves, and then they respect and thank you for how you lead, that the people around you are going to be a testament to your leadership. But also, how are you leading at home? How are you leading in your personal life? You know, we can pursue all that we want to do in business, and I think sometimes that's easy because we can find the vices outside of our home. But how are we showing up to the for the people that God has assigned us to, as parents, as children, where we come adult children? How are we showing up? How are we showing up personally?
Yeah. I call that the first ministry. That's your first ministry that you was called to,
Absolutely.
right? And so if you're not showing up there, you're not being, I feel like, your whole self, right? How can you lead others when your home is unstable, when you're not leading well there?
I didn't have it figured out.
Yeah.
I think it's an order of things, and it's like everything takes place in order and
Right.
arrangement. I had to learn to I didn't having a business. I had a young daughter then. She's in the office. I'm working all the time, and I'm thinking that, okay, I'm showing up to do all this work, and you know what's going to happen is it's because I want to provide and take care of my family.
Right.
So I'm doing that, and I'm making these sacrifices. But I think it's also why our children end up not wanting to be a part of
Yeah.
what we're doing at that time, because they
Right.
see the struggle and the
Right.
sacrifice in that way, because we haven't set a priority. And then also we become depleted, or we become exhausted with what we are doing. So once I figured out how to create the order in my life, it also was a period of, I say there was a time that God sat me and brought me to determine what the place I give from. Like, to never give and be in a place that you're expecting something in return from anyone else. Because at that point, you haven't given freely.
Right.
So I make sure that my spirit is fed first, then my family and those I love and those around me, and then my business, and then community. A lot of people will say, you know, because you have these things you need to give to that's not, and let me say why. If my spirit is not fed, I can't show up for any of those in the right way to give my best. Those around you should not feel robbed of you so that you could show up for your business or other people outside. So when I figured that out, my children, family, they became supporters in a better way of, and now my daughter, she's worked with us we're moving into 6 years.
Wow.
I've seen her growth as a leader, and where she's now, I mean, just phenomenal. She's the way better version of me, which I think our children are. My sons are in college, but they intern with our company.
Okay.
And their plans are to still be a part and have oversight within the company and work. And they all have different companies within our supply chain that they're going to work in. But they're not doing it because they're required to. They're doing it because they want
Want
to.
to.
And they were there as I was building
Yeah.
because they were included. I would go back and share with them what I had walked through and what the development. So they, I believe, are my biggest supporters. And of course, my grandson, that is Mimi, he is a Mimi fan.
Yeah.
But then my business, I show up that way. I'm supported. My family is understanding then when I need to take care of something, and they're making that. They're being supportive in that way. And then so my business is able, and what I'm able to do is to give the resources that are necessary to help, whether it's time or financial resources, or to help with community.
Yeah.
And if it ever loses balance, I also know the order I have to start subtracting so that I can build up back to the better place.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think there is a balance in when you have your priorities in order, right? It allows you to be okay and comfortable with saying no to things that don't serve you, that don't align, that don't make sense. And so that's definitely what I heard in that. I believe, I'll be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the
Mhm.
rhythm in all of that, running companies. But I thank you for sharing that because I know I needed to hear that and somebody out there did too. So I appreciate that. I want to shift to just you in an industry leader in how you steward. At what point did you recognize that your role wasn't just to create a product, but to steward movement within manufacturing and sustainability?
I think I understood that from day one.
Mm,
And that was when I made the straw in my kitchen
mhm.
and had done the research after that. There, I had done something that had never been done before.
What was the straw made out of? Can you share that?
So I won't tell you what.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'll tell you. The straw that I made in my kitchen, the
Uh-huh.
paper straw,
Okay.
that was made out of hemp.
Okay. Hmm.
So that, and the reason is that I had believed that that was the crop that could potentially be the future.
Hmm.
Now, just so I did, and I made a straw in my kitchen, and I found out when I made it as a paper alternative, it didn't break down
Hmm.
in cold water. We're
Hmm.
used to paper straws breaking down, and it also did not break down in boiling.
Hmm.
So I think I got it up to 340 degrees and it didn't
Wow.
break down. So I knew I had something with that. But that night,
Just writing it.
it was all night in my kitchen.
Hmm.
I spent all night, and I remember I stood at the bar for I don't know how long I stood at the bar in my kitchen with my face just like it is right now. Cuz I kept just thinking about how many times people have ideas and they don't do anything.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, what do I do with this? God, like, what? Like, where do I begin?
Hmm.
And I prayed to God and I said, if you will show me and guide me, I'll walk through every door and I'll do everything that you place in front of me. But God, I don't know. I don't have all of the answers. So I need you to show me like I'm in elementary. I mean, that had become kind of the relationship
Hmm.
with God. Like I don't I I need you to make it so
So plain.
clear.
Hmm.
I can't deny that it was you.
Hmm.
So when I say it was nothing fancy, I took and I went and bought a box at Hobby Lobby. I went and got these little cellophane deals and printed labels for my home
Hmm.
computer. I took the knowledge of what I had gained and put it all together, used my computer, put it together, and had Kinko's make a brochure. I made this kit with my very rough straw
Hmm.
that I had made in my kitchen. And that got in front of the gentleman that there was a New York Times article that Starbucks was doing away with straws,
Mm-hmm.
plastic straws. And that there was a company interviewed in that. The CEO of Packing Wood got the product in front of him. He said it was the best thing he had seen in 12 years.
Hmm.
If he could commercialize, if I could commercialize it, it would change the industry. Oh, that was cool.
Hmm.
At that point, then, ended up having a connection to Hofmaster, which is the largest maker of, actually, they had acquired Aardvark, which was the largest paper straw company in the world.
Okay.
And so I said, if I have the paper made to your specifications, will you turn it into straws and do the third party testing? And they did. Well, first of all, I had to find a company that was willing to make it. I found a
Mm-hmm.
company in Kentucky that had not used their paper mill, but they were willing to turn it on and made the paper company a specialty paper company. I tried, I looked, I mean, all the paper companies that you see and know went through that. And then they said, well, we know this person in Maine that may be willing to do it. So the company in Maine said, we'll make it to what they
Mm-hmm.
did. And so we shipped the paper to Hofmaster. And so I made it the straw in my kitchen in the fall of 2018, and they had turned it into the commercial into a straw by 2019, June of
Wow.
2019. But let me tell you, and then you go to, okay, I had done and what I had thought, but at the same time, I was working with a manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
I had a formula that I thought for using it in plastics manufacturing. They said mine wouldn't work as a polymer engineer. And I'm like, 40,000 later, $1,000 later, what they said would work did not work.
Hmm.
So I took the formula that I thought would work. But let me just say, with the paper straw, once we went to the FDA, they said, you got more work to do.
Hmm.
Basically, the cannabinoid profile,
Hmm.
they needed it to be completely certain. The cannabinoid profile had to be removed. THC profile had to be moved. Even though the content was very low and we're talking about an
Hmm.
industrial hemp, they said we needed to be completely safe for a mom to have her 5 month
Mm.
old drink out of.
Gotcha.
That was a whole nother gamut.
Hmm.
But during that time, there were crops that God was putting in front of me through research that had stronger cores, greater yields, weren't as costly per
Mm.
seed, that actually performed better. And I was ignoring it because what I was thinking, but then once the FDA told me that, and I thought, God, you've been showing me the whole
This
time,
whole time.
this whole time,
That's how
but
he
you
do.
allowed me to walk through it.
Hmm.
So anyway, the polymer engineer, that one didn't work. I took the formulation. I had been connected to a polymer chemist in Florida State. She said, I don't see any reason why what you think
Mm.
would work won't work.
Mm.
So I took it to a company in Houston that compounded and pelletized material. I made an appointment with them. I took them everything that I had. I took all of the material
Hmm.
with me. They had a pilot line they were willing to test it on. First try, my formulation worked.
Hmm.
So they charged me $1,500. I was so excited I paid them double. But then there was more to overcome because there's a whole lot more. That was just a minor step
Yeah.
to get to where we needed.
Listen, the obedience and all of that is crazy. So you taking the step at your bar that night, listening to God, being in tune with him, right? Created all of what we see now. And so I want to be very clear that it's not just obedience. There's some actions, additional actions that have to take place in order for you to get to where you are. I heard research, I heard money, I heard all of the things that you have to be willing to give up, that you have to be willing to sacrifice, that you have to be willing to invest in yourself. Can you talk about that, especially for leaders, entrepreneurs that may not have some of those resources? And what I mean by some of those resources, really financial resources, right? What are some suggestions that you would say to them, that you would give them?
start where you're at. Because so first of all, the Bible says faith without works is dead.
That part.
So I can't be obedient. I say I have faith, but I have to be obedient in that walk, and God will work it out for my works, right? So the one, God has prepared someone with the resources that you need, but you have to be ready and be putting in the work, because at the end of the day, it has to give glory to God. So if how do you want to put it? If we're half stepping and we're not showing up to do our part, that meant I'd be up at 3 to 3 o'clock in the morning studying. I would encounter and meet people, and they could help me, but they need something else to be in a position to help me.
Gotcha.
So I would go find what they needed, bring it back to them so they could be a position to help me. So I had to look outside even what I needed.
Right.
That's where that mutually beneficial thing, this is going to be a yoke that you carry, and that's going to be weight. And so there's going to be that you're going to have to at times help carry the weight for somebody else for that to exist, to happen in the way that it needed to. But it also, there's a manufacturer here, Kevin, he owns Polyfilms, and he says my nickname in their facility is Reroute. So the other part is manufacturers. I rely heavily on manufacturers as I was building through R&D to give me the honest feedback. So if you are so emboldened to what you think it should be, I needed industry experts to tell me how to better my product.
Right.
So as they were engaged in a part of it, the reason he calls me Reroute, he calls it that spinning wheel that you have on a computer where something is loading. He said, to us, you're always loading and you'll always redirect when you need to in order to get the desired outcome. Because the reality is we desire this outcome. We have to be, if we're going to listen and say we align and we walk with God, we have to be paying attention. I have a deal, and people ask that question. I don't, people say, trust the process. I say that's hogwash. I ain't ever trusted no process.
Come on.
The process is ugly. The process is uncertain. The process is a challenge.
Yeah.
I endure the process and everything that is necessary because I want to get to the promise. I trust the promise.
Come on.
So I'm willing to. So people will blindly, if you say trust the process, you're blindly going to move in directions that are not serving for the outcome that you need.
That's so good, because I'm one of those ones that say trust the process, but it isn't the process. It's the promise that you need to trust.
Because if I am willing to endure the process, it means I'm willing to take everything that I have and come to be able to get there. And it also means I'm trusting God, because that's where the promise lies.
That's the promise. Ooh. Okay, y'all. I got chill bumps. Okay, we're going to keep moving on because I could stay there. Control, collaboration. Innovative ideas often meet resistance, especially when they disrupt existing systems. How do you lead through skepticism while still inviting collaboration?
Education. I learned I had to lead with education. I was doing something that would never be done before. And to be honest, through the journey, people have their own narratives of what it should be too. And, then there's the status quo and the norm. So I was willing to also explain the why. I was also very honest. I'd say, I don't know. You have to ask God why he put that ability in those crops to do what they do. But around me, I think because I was so convicted and because there were people that God had prepared, that's where that collaboration, let me just say, there's no way God could give me something like this.
Hmm.
I even, there was a point when I said, God, who have you prepared to cover me in
Hmm.
this walk, for my safety, even
Yeah, most
as I
definitely.
move? Who have you prepared to cover me in prayer?
Hmm.
Who have you prepared that you are going to talk to, that's going to say the right thing to me,
Hmm.
that's going to hear it from you, repeat it to me in a way that I understand you are speaking through them?
Yeah.
I'm going to go and I'm going to show up. So that is, but it was collaborating with, we built our business model. First, we understood that we wanted to make a global impact.
Right.
And the plastics had a far greater lead.
Hmm.
And then also the fact that I had a technology that can make
Hmm.
petroleum eco-friendly.
Hmm.
So I wasn't, how would I put it? I wasn't only creating something that hasn't been done before, but here I am now, have the ability to change.
Yeah.
But I was seeing experts, engineers. It began to be like my most comfortable conversation is with a chemist and an engineer to share with, because they get it.
Yeah.
I did have at one point, I was at a meeting with a bunch of chemists, and they said, honestly, if you had a degree in chemistry, you wouldn't have figured it out, but you
Really?
know. And one of them explained, they said, because in chemistry, as we learn, it tells you to take a whole thing and break it down into parts and
Okay.
see how it can be made into something else.
Hmm.
But what God was showing me was how to take the whole thing that He had created and understand and see the properties in it. And as a result, the whole thing gave a manifestation. And then I was able to file for broad patents to cover this entire segment of crops that
Hmm.
had fibrous and woody cores, to move to getting patenting and like trademarking for a logo that has God in it and opening His
Hmm.
hands in markets where they're sometimes removed from
Right.
the thought of God. But even in
Right.
Asia market, that is the leader in biotechnology, for me to get broad patents approved and issued in those regions of the world. I mean, so no, I don't have a degree in chemistry and engineering, but God controls it all.
Hmm.
Like, so my patents, because they're the making, are chemistry and engineering.
Hmm.
So I
Come
guess
on. Let me ask you this because I heard you say, you prayed about the people that God surrounded you with who would be praying for you. What are you intentional about when it comes to protecting your gates, right? To make sure that, the outside noise is not coming in, to make sure that you're not surrounded by people who don't mean you good. How are you intentional about that?
you don't get my ear
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
You can't tell me God sent you,
Hmm.
because God is going to show me who He sends.
And you
You
trust them that much
that
to know.
much
Yeah.
to know,
Yeah.
because they're going to come and affirm
Mhm.
what God has already shown me. That's how I know He's sending them. That does not mean, sometimes people think that that means everybody that comes is for the benefit. Some people are there for your lesson,
Mm.
because there's something you need to walk through. And sometimes it's just sent to disrupt you,
Right.
to throw you off. The enemy is very good and
Mm.
active too, and he's paying attention.
Most
So
definitely.
those people that come, that's why you have to know what God has said to you, and then it's affirmed in the people that you send. And but then you also need to be discerning and pay attention. So praying for God for that gift of
Yeah.
discernment, to but also, I told someone today, I have an amazing person that I've been able to meet, Bishop Rosetta Bryson. She's here from Florida, had some introductions. She owns the only African American woman owned fintech platform that is used and traded at Wall Street. So she was here. And, I wanted here for her meetings, and we had a conversation this morning as she was heading out. And I say this for anyone: your role is to plant and water. And the watering is only where that's the vision God gave them. Water where they need you to water, where they need you to water, because that's how God is using them, not where you want to water. Because that growth, though, is between God and them. And sometimes you are not a part of that growth because it's not your trajectory. Sometimes we want to own everything where we are planting and watering and feel like we're entitled to it.
Right.
That's a person planting and watering, expecting God to have everything grow for them alone. I trust that where I plant and water, God will bless me in what He has for me because of my obedience to showing up where He needed me to be on behalf of other people.
Woo. Listen, you are blessing my soul, and I just cannot thank you enough for what you were speaking today. And you told me when we were on the phone earlier, you said, I'm gonna speak my authentic truth, and I'm gonna speak, what I know, and I'm never gonna hold back, just who God is in my life. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for giving us this. I'm not done yet, but I just had to let you know, like, sitting here, I'm holding back all the tears because I'm like, God, sometimes you can think it's for other people, but this was definitely for me today. And so
Oh.
I just thank you for that, because there's a lot of times we do this work, we plant the seeds, right? And we water, and we can get bombarded with all of the things of why we shouldn't, why it's going wrong, things not coming together like we thought that it should, right? And so just to hear you say, you got to just trust the promise, not the process, but the promise, that is definitely what I needed today in my soul. So I just thank you for that. Okay, I'm gonna move on. I just had to say that. Okay, so who have you had to become as a leader to guide a company rooted in ethics, innovation, and long-term vision?
Say it again.
Who have you had to become as a leader
As a leader,
to guide a company that's rooted in the ethics, innovation, and long-term vision?
I had to become authentic.
Mm,
I had to be comfortable with owning where I'm lacking
mhm.
so that I can grow to be a better version of myself.
Yeah.
I had to be willing to listen. I had to be willing to self reflect. I'm a person that, like, I don't think I had to become my greatest critic and my greatest
Hmm.
cheerleader.
Right.
The reason is, listen, I have people that cheer and, all of that. But I also know that just as soon as you could potentially do the things somebody doesn't want you to do, that all that cheering can turn to boos. So I learned not to care about the cheers and the boos.
Mhm.
Like, don't get me wrong. Understand that whatever it is that draws out a person to cheer or boo, that ain't got nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
So the reality is that when I say my own critic,
Mhm.
I can be in my shower and know I have done something or not done something or gotten passive about something. And I'm like, Sharina, you know better. And I literally say my name
Yeah.
because sometimes we need to be told.
Mm.
But who's going to tell us better than ourselves, that knows the struggle we're walking through, knowing the work we put
Mm.
in? No one's going to know it as well as we know it,
Mhm.
but we also know where our spirit is challenged.
Right.
So we need to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And then because I know the work I put in,
Yeah.
that's why for me, it can be, I can dance when the University of Oklahoma launches our bag and I'm giddy in
Yeah.
that because you know what? Um, I know the work
Yeah.
that it takes to do it. I know the work that I put in, and I know that God took this thing that He saw,
Mm.
and I'm literally seeing that seed
Mhm.
manifest into what is real. Like, to come up with the concept, to build the company, to own the supply chain, to create global distribution. I had a conversation with one of the largest investment companies in the world not long ago about they just wanted to have a conversation about the process for me in
Mhm.
developing a green technology and supply chain and how it's been so different, the time frame,
Mhm.
because there is this period of acquisition, client acquisition, that sometimes looks like 24 months to 3 years just
Mhm.
to acquire and walk through the process of onboarding with a global client. But then also to develop the technology from conception
Mhm.
to prove it. That was 2018 for
Wow.
me
Yeah.
to where we are today. And for them, even developing the technology alone is a minimum of 7 to 12 years. And then to move to, okay, is it feasible? Does it have a place in the
Yeah.
marketplace? Now, is it commercially available? Now, to move to distribution and then the onboarding process, they're talking upwards of 20 plus years.
Wow.
So, God did for me. I mean, in 2020 was when we got the stability testing that I had a commercial
Yeah.
grade material that could be used in industrial manufacturing. Anything made of plastics Utopia Plastics is a drop in replacement for. So for me, and then the onboarding process to be globally, to be teaching a class to global MBA cohort at Cambridge Judge, one of the most
Oof.
prestigious universities in the world. And I'm teaching these people who pay $200,000 to go through that program how to build sustainable ecosystem business models and how to build it out, and all of these professionals that lead for industry. Oh yeah, but God, as I'm on the train into Cambridge preparing and having the conversation, and I'm the week in London doing it, or if I'm invited to, I was in Belgium,
Oh.
one of my first international speaking, and I was presenting at the International Biopolymer and Polymer Science Summit, and these leading institutions, these leading like providers in this
Mm.
space, I'm watching their presentations about where the industry is challenged and what they need. And all of what they said it needed and needed to take place
Mhm.
was a part of what we solved.
Mm.
So when I get up and give my presentation, immediately then afterward, we're getting meetings with these
Wow.
companies because it's like you've figured it out. And then these are the R&D people, these are the learning institutions, these are the industries. And then to be invited at the table with
Mm.
all of these companies because of the solution that we have.
Mm.
And but yeah, I'm invited. It's that I'm educating the
Mm.
industry
Mm.
on what true sustainable materials look like, and companies and the leaders, and then the proof, having people write white papers
Mm.
around my work, and the government sitting in front of USXM
Mm.
about, how the solution that we offer, and a firm bringing us in to offer our solution to governments, being there in governments and putting plans together for them on how they can address sustainability, how they could combat the challenges. It's
Nobody but God. Nobody but God.
Nobody but God. I mean, but
Nobody.
God. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm like, I don't ever think um I this isn't a space that people look like me.
Hmm.
I am this is I got phone calls from leaders of companies just saying congratulations
Oh.
at times because they get it. But also the part where there is the learning curve
Mm.
for industry. Sometimes we got to figure out this really isn't the thing that works
Right.
so that we can learn the right way. So you also have to have a fair level of patience, but I have a strong level of stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
When I know that something is, I know. It's as real as I know God.
Yeah.
You can't tell me
Nothing else.
God doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
You can't tell me what God gives to me isn't real.
Hmm.
So even though all of the industry or whoever it is may think something different, I know I've seen it. So I'm not going to be sold into the narrative just because everyone else.
Hmm.
I'm not going to be the person to jump off the bridge because everybody else is. I'm not, God, I've never been just to go flow with it. I need you
Yeah.
to help me understand and why.
Yeah.
So once I know something, I stand in that.
Yeah.
And the knowing has created a sense of consistency, trust. It's built into partnerships. God has revealed it
Hmm.
in the time that He needed to for certain people. So, yeah, it's
She
pretty
said, yeah.
cool.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So we're wrapping up. Let me ask you this for the founder, the entrepreneur listening who feels the pull to build something meaningful but feels overwhelmed by responsibility, what truth would you speak to them right now?
First, what is what you are doing or building doing for God? Because that feeling of being overwhelmed and that it's too much, I would say have a conversation. And I say that but I also understand that not everybody has that. Not everybody is even willing to see God.
Hmm.
But you're asking me what
Yes.
my advice would be.
Yes.
I'm going to give you, because that's my advice.
Mm-hmm.
A person who sees God and has to turn to God. There was a time when I told one of our partners, we were walking through something and we were this person had come to us and they had all the right things to say.
Mm-hmm.
They had, they knew we were rooted in faith as our organization, and they, you show up.
Mm-hmm.
But everything was becoming a challenge. It was
Hmm.
like it wasn't smooth. It wasn't
Right.
what I was used to. And then it was causing me angst, frustration. Like it just wasn't the smoothness. So people around me were kind of saying, still press in. Even they were still, let's press, let's get it done, let's get this agreement done. But it wasn't feeling right.
Yeah.
So I said,
Hmm.
I'm going to just stand still. Because this ain't how God showed up in this
Right.
journey for me. We are not. A lot of things got revealed later. It wasn't. It wasn't for us and it didn't make sense. So I was pressing to make something work that wasn't working.
Hmm.
I also say, you know, sometimes we resist that because we feel like there's that expression. It's like, don't be afraid to fail. I've never failed at anything. And I tell people this, I've never failed at anything. And the reason I say is because failure to me is giving up. If you stop doing a thing that is not serving you, or if you stop doing a bad thing, that's not failure. That's actually taking what you're learning in the process, converting that to wisdom, and then applying it. So if you're giving up on something you believe in, you have failed.
Yeah.
For me to take the firm stand that I believe in it. So if you as a founder believe in what you are doing,
Yeah.
first show up to put in the work first. Don't ask someone to believe in or invest
Come on.
time in something you are not willing to do.
Come on.
If you've got to be willing to make the first sacrifice. Then if it's becoming overwhelming, as a business owner and what I do, I recognize where my gifts lie.
Right.
I recognize where I'm good at what I need to do. So I need to outsource that, because if you are trying to take on and do everything,
Yeah.
you are robbing your business of the thing that is supposed to make it grow. Bring in a friend. For me, when I started, one thing I did have was equity in this company. I couldn't pay everybody. I mean, there's people that I'm being introduced to, friends, they're chemists, they're engineers. I can't pay you nothing right now. But I know where this is going.
Come on.
And I know my dedication. Let me give you a share for the work that you're doing. The other thing I did was, if a person came and they wanted to invest money and be a partner, that ain't going to work alone. Because here's what's happened. If you invest money, I'm going to still have to hire somebody to do what I need.
Right.
So I'm going to choose a partner that has the skills and talents that they can help grow. So every one of our partners, even as we were building our org structure and as talented, it was not enough. Some came and they were given units for just showing up and being in the grind and doing the work on a more consistent basis. Others had resources in a way, but I still need you to I need you, when we get to this point and we need to assess our SAM and our TAM and what the market, and we need to do that assessment. I need you to show up in that meeting. So we built out our marketing team. We built out our biz development team. We built out our business org team. We built out our IT team, and understanding what was necessary. Now, mind you, I did have a head start because I had built a successful company.
Right.
And that was harder. So I could go back to the cuts and bruises that I had, but I learned that one thing that was a real lesson. Ooh, yeah. When I started my first business, I needed money. As the director of operations for the company that I was in, one day the owner, I built it to a national company. He came in and said he was done. He took his money. Hundreds of people were out jobs. So I started on my own. I had built the company, so hey, I could start. It was hard. So let me tell you, I understand what a payday loan is. I understand what going through bankruptcy is. I understand what robbing Peter to pay Paul
Come on.
is. I had at that time a husband that was going through physical therapy school. I am the breadwinner. I'm trying to keep people in paid. That was not, and I'm bootstrapping my business. Someone comes along, friend, says, I'll invest in your business. What is it going to take? I said, it'd take 1 month worth of equipment. That was $30,000. I was in the cable and internet space. So it's $30,000. So we decide, we pick a date to launch our business as partners. We're 50-50. $30,000 January. By March, the money was paid back to him. That year we closed with 2.5 million
Come on.
in revenue. But he never spent a day in the office. And that, let me tell you, he told me investing with me was the best decision he could have ever made, but the worst decision I could have made. The reason is I had undervalued the IP that
Hmm.
I brought to the table in the pursuit of the need of a money that was pretty much insignificant.
Come on.
Fast forward, having to buy him out at a later date, but then
Mm.
the reality is, are you undervaluing your IP because you are trying, or what you bring to the table as a founder? That's what capitalists, VC, that's what these people are willing to give you pennies. That's what these early stage.
Mm.
When I was building Utopia and a company came out, I had just had my patent filed. I had just got my straw back. They came, California, sat with me in Oklahoma at the Skirvin and offered me $25 million for my company and said, we'll build it. And I hadn't had anything built. I just had IP.
Mm.
And I'm like, if you're offering me, you just gave me the biggest compliment,
Hmm.
because if you're willing to buy it at this stage,
Hmm.
that means I really have something.
Yep.
And they had a whole plan. We'll have a 2 to 5 year exit strategy. You can guide the company, you can start it. But really, it was around, they were going to find a buyer for my intellectual property.
Hmm.
And at that point, they would have owned it.
Yeah.
But that's going to get in the way of my generational wealth and what I had and God
Come
was
on.
giving. And, to get a call from my patent attorneys and they say, do you really know the value of what you have? Oh, yeah, I
Hmm.
know the
I know.
value. I know I'm keeping it as a privately held company,
Yeah.
so no one else controls my narrative
Hmm.
for where my IP is. I have built and structured other companies to be positioned to go public, but that's going to be the decision of the partners that I brought in that
Yeah.
company to be able to do it. But this that God gave me, that He downloaded to me, that will remain owned by the legacy that I build, that came from the womb, and what God has for them after me.
Come on. I feel like there is so much more we could talk about. And I'm just sitting here like, I want to ask you some more. I want to ask you some more, but I know we're on a time crunch. So let me ask you this. What do you hope they say about the kind of leadership that you built years from now when they say Utopia Plastics?
That she gave glory to God
Hmm.
along the way, that God will say, well done,
Hmm.
to the race that I
That's it.
ran, that Utopia is a household name, that communities across the globe are using what God gave and God is expanding it to heal people, that where Utopia is, there is health and wellness,
Mm.
there are strong family bonds, there's economic opportunity, and people are being educated so that they can have the access and resources necessary to expand the gifts that God has given them.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you. Like I said, I needed this today. I needed this. So
Me
I was
too.
definitely that one. So I appreciate you sharing your heart, for being authentic and just pouring back into the one that needed to hear this today outside of me, right? Let me ask you this. Where can people follow Utopia Plastics and what's coming up?
We on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
we'll share what we're doing. I have a page on Facebook. You're welcome to follow me, Sharina Perry. Um, you're also on LinkedIn, Sharina Perry, then Utopia Plastics, Plastix. That's important. That's trademarked. I own the
Yes.
word Utopia. I own Utopia Plastics. So that's important. I have Instagram, not as I don't do anything on
Hmm.
TikTok by choice. But those are, follow us, share our story. I ask that you never know who may know
Hmm.
or may need.
Yeah.
I ask people to just share. A lot of times I say what I do and people have, it's foreign. I understand that this work, we don't have a high presence of African American people in manufacturing. While no, and no, let me rewind, that own manufacturing facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Most are made up of minorities in the facilities because they have a high presence in our communities. Um, I hope that those who work in those facilities see that they can become owners. I know we're causing many of the workers we see to dream
Mm-hmm.
differently. That's good. I'm proud of what we're doing, what God is doing for the people that touch Utopia,
Mm-hmm.
that come to know, that use it, that find a sense of strength when they
Yeah.
see me and who we bring in. We do bring diverse groups, we bring diverse people together. We are proving that we are better together.
Mm-hmm.
This is bigger than ourselves, and that collectively on this journey to utopia, we see things that bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's I'm just grateful.
Yeah. As you should be. You should be very proud of the work that God is doing in you. And I see it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet and sit down with you and have this conversation. Is there anything that you would like to share or leave here today before we end this?
Keep watching God.
Hmm.
I while I would say, in this time and people listen, that hopefully what you have heard, you're not so glued in on the
Mm.
words that you don't take an opportunity to reflect and ask God what He has for you. Um, but I tell people, if you keep watching me, or if you watch me, focus on watching me, you might miss God. But if you focus on watching God, you'll never miss me.
Mm.
So, because you're not going to miss what God is doing.
Mm.
And that's for ourselves, for anyone else. Everything, everyone was placed here on purpose, in purpose by God for His glory.
Mm.
You're not in a race to anyone else.
Mm.
You're not compared to anyone else. This is your race to run and win. And every step that you take, everything that you do, every tear that you
Mm.
cry, God is paying attention to. You have to decide at what point you are going to believe that you are made in His image and everything is possible because He created you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Listen, I know you loved what you heard or maybe even saw. So please like, comment, subscribe to the Real Room Pod. We would love to have you. And listen to all of my leaders and founders out there. It's not about trusting the process, it's about trusting the promise. Which one are you going to choose? Until the next time, keep it real.